Hey guys, this is J-Boy from the J-Boy Show. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's a free way to make podcasts. It's unbelievable. It's how I started. Number one, like I said, it's free. Number two, it gives you creative tools to be able to add to your podcast, whether it be background music and all type of stuff. Three, they can get it on Spotify, Apple. You can get paid with sponsorships just by using ads, very similar to this one. So, download the free Anchor app, guys. It's unbelievable. You'll love it. And at the end of the day, it can get you started. All right. See you soon. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the J-Boy Show. Another edition, an exciting edition. I appreciate you guys tuning in. I really do. Before I even get started, want to thank everybody. I got overwhelming response on the Intel segment we brought you last week with Greg Brown. Had a ton of viewership. And like I said, man, you guys, I love bringing you guys information as good as I can give it to you. And I said I was going to reveal my source on it. And I will. I'm going to say his name once. And he was right the whole time, and I appreciate him a lot. His name's Lawrence Asiedu. He plays at Grambling, played for me at Fort Scott from Texas. He's Greg Brown's first cousin, and he was right. He was right. It was Greg Brown to Texas. The intel was right on. And I know that wasn't a super hard prediction, but it's always nice to have people on the inside. And I know just like anything that starts off or any new business or in this case, a new podcast, there's going to be people that obviously question the legitimacy of it, and that's okay. I understand that. At the end of the day, it's part of the deal. And look, we're not thin-skinned here. I ain't worried about it. At the end of the day, we were right. We were right, and that's what you guys want, and that's what matters. And at the end of the day, I just want to thank Law Dog. He was great, and it's the first of many Intel segments we'll have. Like I said, I was lucky enough to form basically a coalition of people around the country that have either played or are coaches or handlers or anything like that. So hopefully be able to give you guys up-to-date information. Obviously, once we get into football recruiting, I'm a lot more connected there. It just happened to be happenstance that Law reached out to me about Greg. But again, like I said, I do want to thank him and I want to thank you guys. But let's move on to today's show because there's a lot here. And I want to also start a segment. We're going to be sending out invitations. The J-Boy Show will this year be sending out invitations to what I call the SEC Player Haters Ball. And if you've ever watched the Chappelle Show, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And literally what it is going to be, it is going to be a group of people probably every 2 episodes that I do, one every 2 episodes, that we are going to send an invitation because they hate the SEC for no other reason than success. And that seems to be a derangement syndrome that is being passed around, in my opinion, just as bad as COVID-19, literally for the past, I'd say, 7 to 10 years. And we'll get into that a little bit later. I think you guys know who I'm talking about. This guy may be SEC hater number 1. But I want to shift back to, obviously, Auburn basketball recruiting, because that's really kind of what's been at the forefront here lately. And Greg Brown obviously went to Texas. We all know that. And there are no moral victories. There are none. You either get the kid or somebody else gets the kid. You either win or you lose. But I do think after a certain span of time, you do have to look at the transition of Auburn basketball from where it was to where it is. And I don't think you call that a moral victory. I think it's the truth. Because I remember, and I'm sure a lot of you guys remember, when people, and they weren't super excited, but we're signing guys like Rob Chubb. And that's no offense to Rob Chubb. That's no offense. He signed a scholarship in the SEC. Good for him. He'll have that his whole life. But if you remember the Lebo days, and you remember the Barbie days, it is night and day from a recruiting aspect of who Auburn is a finalist for, who Auburn signs, and it really equates to the talent level of your team directly. And I think as Auburn people need to see the transition of now backup plans for Auburn are 6'10" 4-stars. That's incredible. Corey Evans from Rivals, who is not an Auburn fan. He is not an Auburn fan. Had a story out that basically was talking about the risers in basketball recruiting, who is now rising to an elite level of recruiting. And he had a list. Number 1 on that list, Auburn. That's mind-blowing if you really think about it. Now, it sucks missing out on Greg Brown. It sucks missing out on Jalen Green. I understand that. It's the truth. But guys, I remember when Corvatney Barber signed with Auburn, and you would have thought we signed Jesus Christ. And there were connections that led him to Auburn. It wasn't like Auburn was going out and snagging 5 stars. And Vaught was a good player. He was a good player. Really good player. Really good player. But now you're looking at Auburn being in the finalists for one and dones consistently. Now, I want to make this point. I don't think Bruce is going for the one and done takeover like Kentucky, like Duke. Because if you look at it, really, Kentucky won the national championship with Anthony Davis a while ago. But really, what have they done from a championship standpoint since? What about Duke? I mean, you can say North Carolina does develop some guys. It's the truth. And they were horrible this past year. Some injuries had to do with it, but the talent level on their roster wasn't nearly what it always is. But I think Bruce is going for developmental and sprinkling in a couple one and dones. And I think that's the best formula to do it, because if you look, okay, Isaac Okoro, NBA player, playing next to Anthony McLemore, not an NBA player. A guy that felt like was at Auburn for 15 years. Him and Austin Whiteley both. But those guys have been in, they understand, and I think it takes pressure off the developmental guys. The guys who have been here longer, who understand, who know the system, who know how it works. Now you throw in these one and done, elite talent, and it blends nicely. It seems to me like Auburn has a diversity of player on their team. And I think that works in Bruce's favor. I think it helps him gel. I think that is what Bruce is going for, and it's working. It's not signing 6 one and dones. It's trying to sign 2, maybe 3 one and dones, possibly, because they're not all one and done. But you mix that with a Justin Powell, with a Chris Moore, with a Bryce Brown, with a Jared Harper, with a Austin Wiley, with a Horace Spencer. And now the team is multifaceted. You have guys that understand their role and guys that know when it's time to take over. Those are what the best basketball teams have. They know who to get the ball to, win it when they have to, but they also understand that their role is just as important to win games. There's a lot of guys. Basketball is crazy. You can have one player score 50 points and get your ass beat. And I think Bruce has really gelled those two differing recruiting styles into one. And I think it allows him to be pickier with the elite guys that he's recruiting. Look at this class, for example. JT Thor, to me, is an elite prospect. Game-wise, measurables-wise. The other guys, Chris Moore, developmental. Justin Powell, developmental. I mean, It's a perfect blend, because you know Auburn is going to sign another elite guy. They're going to. And there's a bunch of guys left on the board. And let's take a look at them. Number one, you got to talk about Jonathan Kuminga. You have to. Been some Auburn buzz around him lately. If you don't know who he is, he was the number 1 player in the 2021 class and is attempting to reclassify to 2020. And I think that's going to be made easier because they waived the SAT and the ACT, and I think that was one of the major holdups with him. So if he's able to reclassify, because Auburn needs a scorer. We don't know enough about Turbo. Turbo could be an unbelievable player. We just don't know yet, and you can't bank on that. You don't have depth on that. There's not a body of work to look at to make a decision. Auburn signs Jonathan Kuminga. He's coming in to start. He will come in and start. And that's not a knock on Turbo. Shoot, Jonathan Kuminga could come in and Turbo could outplay him. Because we just haven't seen. We don't know yet. We don't know yet on Turbo. The jury's still out. And Bruce is doing what a great coach has to do. He's trying to find elite talent to plug and place it on the team. Now, who else is out there? I think Auburn will be in it till the end with Kuminga. I think they will be in it till the end with Kuminga. I got a weird feeling that it's going to come down to Auburn, Kentucky, and Texas Tech. Because I know he has a brother at Texas Tech. But that didn't affect JT Thor, who had a brother at Oklahoma State. So looking at who else is out there. Obviously, we know Dylan Cardwell, the kid from McEachern, 6'10", 4-star. I think his upside is tremendous. But just like a lot of guys coming out of high school, he's probably going to need a year. I think he's on the back burner for Auburn right now. And I think he's willing to wait because I think Sharif Cooper and him really want to play together. You look at Kai Soto, 7'1", shooter, not super physical down in the post. I think he's on the back burner. I don't think that's what Bruce is looking for. I really don't. You have Adama Sanogo, 6'10", power forward center. He had Auburn in his top 10, but everything I look at, to me, says UConn or Nebraska. I think Gonzaga's in the mix as well. But there's one guy out there that mentioned Auburn in a recent story. Mentioned Auburn. And whenever that happens, whenever they say, okay, you've listed these schools, and then a kid says, oh, wait, these guys too, that means something is developing on that front. Because here's the story behind McCord Maker. He's draft eligible, but hasn't signed an agent yet. And right now, the way it's looking is the NBA doesn't think he's quite ready to go as high as what he thinks he should go. Okay. He has till June 3rd to withdraw his name. Well, in an interview the other day, they were talking about the schools that are in it for him if he were to choose to go to college. You had Oregon, you had UCLA, there was a couple others, and then he mentioned Auburn. Don't think Bruce won't sneak in here late and grab this kid now. Obviously, there's a long way to go with it, but him mentioning Auburn by name is a big deal. And I know the coaches saw that. So you can expect that recruitment to be ramped up times 1,000. Will it make hay? I don't know. But I think the dream scenario for Auburn right now is finishing with Kuminga and McCord. If they do that, I mean, it's Kate bar the door. Now, in reality, if I had to make a prediction right now, and it's so far out with all these guys, I would say Auburn finishes with Kuminga and Cardwell. I think that's how they finish. It gives you your scorer, and it gives you another big man that you know is going to develop into something. Now, I do want to shift. I do want to shift from Auburn basketball, and I do want to talk about the draft this past weekend. And I'm not one of these people that I absolutely loves the draft. I watch it. Obviously, there's nothing else on right now. It's interesting to follow because, to me, there's always some very, very, let's just say, interesting picks. And it's going to kind of transition into how the SEC is dominating. And there's a huge stat. There's a huge telling stat on Auburn in the NFL draft versus the top tier teams that are in the playoff almost every year, are in the top of the SEC almost every year. And I think it's going to kind of give a window into why Auburn has really finished where they finished. Because regardless of what anybody tells you, regardless of how good the coach is, regardless of how good of facilities you got or anything like that, the players win the game. The players win the game. And 99.9% of the time, the team with the best players wins the game. And obviously the NFL draft is a great barometer, right? It's an absolute great barometer on where teams are from a talent level. Because obviously the team that has the most players drafted is probably had a pretty good year. you would probably have to think they had a pretty good year. So let's look at the numbers. The first round, dominated by the SEC. Absolutely dominated by the SEC. Joe Burrow went 1. You had SEC players drafted 1, 5, 7, 9, 10, 12, 14, 15, 20, 22, 28, 30, 32. That's incredible. That's incredible. And it shows you why the SEC is so dominant. Because they have the best players. They have the best players. And here's a stat for you guys. Here's a crazy stat. Okay, since 2010, when Auburn won the national championship, since 2010, Alabama has had 92 players drafted. They're number 1 in the SEC. LSU has had 76 players drafted. Florida in the 50s, Georgia in the 50s, Auburn at 39. Arkansas and Mississippi State are at 36. That is the most damning stat, in my opinion, on Auburn in the past decade. The most damning. That is a gap, okay? And I know you guys can do math. That's a 53-player gap between Auburn and Alabama. You could double Auburn's number. Okay, double it. Make it 78. There's still 14 players behind Alabama. That is crazy. And it shows you, really, if you look at the games where Auburn has beat Alabama, okay, even in 2010, came back down from 24. Kick 6. Illegal participation. It's not like Auburn is beating them by like 30 points, every 3 years, 4 years. And this is why. You can't just have a few dominant players and average players everywhere else and win the SEC or go to the playoff. Auburn playoff appearances? None. That's an unbelievable gap. You mean to tell me Auburn has only had 3 more players drafted than Arkansas and Mississippi State since 2010? Godly, man. No wonder. Georgia, it's an L. And you have to have fluke things almost happen against Alabama to beat them. You have to survive long enough to have something fluke happen against Alabama. That's a bad stat, guys. That's not good. And it's something that's got to be fixed. It's got to be fixed. It's recruiting. It comes down to recruiting. You're not going to out-role player everybody. I'm wondering when Auburn is going to figure that out. And I know it seems like I'm coming down on them. Well, I am. Look at the numbers. There's no reason Auburn should be that low. There's no reason. There's no reason Auburn shouldn't have a playoff appearance yet. There's no reason Auburn's offensive line shouldn't be as good as anybody's. Hell, Auburn can recruit great D linemen because they know Auburn. Hey, shoot, Auburn is known for D linemen. Auburn is known as a running team. Then how the hell can you not get good enough players to be able to run the ball when it counts? I'll tell you why. Look at the offensive line coaches, and look, J.B. Grimes had a great career, and he has never done anything wrong to me. But at the end of the day, Sam Pittman was working him at Georgia. Working him. And now Matt Luke goes to Georgia and Sam Pittman goes to Arkansas, that's known for offensive linemen. Arkansas will beat Auburn on offensive linemen unless Bicknell can come in and change it. That's a huge task for Coach Bicknell. That's a huge task. Because the SEC, it ain't getting any easier. And you have to have an offensive, like Rodney Gardner can go get his D lineman and then coach them up and then have them playing their nuts off and then go to the league. Auburn doesn't have that on the offensive line. Why do you think they can't line up and get 2 yards on 3rd and 2? When they have to have it, when it matters, when they know what's coming. Can you run the ball when they know what's coming? That's a scary number, folks. That's a scary number. But looking at more of an outside perspective on the draft, okay? And I'm sending out our first invitation to the SEC Player Haters Ball. And it is going to go to a guy that has been hating on the SEC for as long as I've seen him on TV. Former Florida State quarterback and analyst Danny Cannell. Yep. Danny Cannell. I know you know who that is. He had a very interesting tweet and then tried to defend the tweet when he realized how stupid it made him look. Here's the tweet. This is after the SEC is dominating in the draft. It's no surprise the SEC is dominating the draft for the past decade. They buy the best players. College football is an arms race, and when you can outspend everyone, it creates an imbalance. Okay, Danny. You do realize that Florida State is probably one of the top 5 dirtiest programs of all time. If you don't think that Bobby Bowden was paying everybody, you're out of your mind. And it's the hypocrisy here is hilarious. And the thing is, it's his statement is not false, but his reasoning for the statement is ridiculous. And what do I mean by that? He then tried to say that he wasn't saying the SEC was cheating. Let me read you the first 2 lines again, and you tell me what you think. It's no surprise the SEC is dominating the draft for the past decade. They buy the best players. Come on, Danny. Come on, don't be soft about it. If you're going to have the take, don't be soft about it. Everybody, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, because I've seen it. Everybody in college football cheats somehow. Everybody does. The difference is in the SEC, look at the attendance of an Arkansas game or a Mississippi State game compared to the attendance of a Wake Forest game in the ACC, Boston College game in the ACC. It's a totally different level of commitment. There are no rules that allow the SEC to spend more than everybody else. They generate the revenue. You want to know why? Because of the fanship. That's why. It does just mean more. For a lot of people, it means everything. And everybody does it. You're not wrong when you're saying SEC they buy the best players. You're not wrong. They just have the best salesmen. Get better salesmen. And you say college football is an arms race. That's exactly right. It's a $1 billion industry. And when you outspend everyone, it creates an imbalance. Okay, I guess that money just grew on a tree. I guess one day, Mike Slive just walked out of his front yard and there was just a huge oak tree with $100 bills growing on it, Danny. You've got to stop doing this. You've got to stop. We know you're a Florida State homer, and that's okay. But don't be butthurt because they're getting rolled by Boise State at home, dog. So make sure you check your mailbox because you're going to get an invitation to the SEC Player Haters Ball. Congratulations. You're an idiot. And again, I think everybody would agree with me on that one. I mean, it's strictly supply and demand. Supply and demand. The ACC's got to get them outside of Clemson. That's why Dabo's never going to leave. That's why I laugh when people say, oh, Dabo's going to go to Bama after next time. No, he's not. I don't care if he was born on the 50-yard line. Why would he do that? He's got a lifetime contract at Clemson. Basically, he didn't have to play anybody. He didn't have to play anybody. You can what, go to the SEC West, where you're going to share a state with Auburn? Man, get out of here, man. Dude's got a family. Guy ain't going nowhere. If he does, I'd be shocked. I'd be absolutely 100% shocked. So again, and back to the draft. Because, like I said, the SEC did dominate the draft. They've been dominating the draft. Everybody knows that. Okay? And you look at the Auburn players that were taken. Obviously, Derek Brown, 7th to the Panthers. Noah Igmanani, 30th to the Dolphins. Marlon Davidson, 47th to the Eagles, and to the Falcons. I believe Jack Driscoll to the Eagles. And good for them. Good for them. Smart move by Derek and Marlon. Shoot, smart move by Noah and Jack. Great decision to transfer in, Jack. Worked out for you. Noah switching positions worked out for you. You're a first-round pick. Marlon coming back, improved your draft stock. I know you're a second round, but improved your draft stock a little bit. And Derek Brown, we knew he was the top 10 pick. I'm surprised he didn't go earlier. I think he's that dominant. But there's a few picks in this draft that just absolutely, and there isn't every one, just that make no sense. I can't believe the Eagles picked Jalen Hurts that early. What are you guys doing? I'm not saying Jalen Hurts is a bad player. He won a lot of games, but it wasn't like he was at Bama sitting back in the pocket throwing rocket shots people left and right. Jake Coker won a lot of games at Bama. Greg McElroy won a lot of games at Bama. They weren't great players. I'd say AJ McCarron, AJ could spin it. He could spin it. His deep ball was nice. And McElroy had a decent deep ball. But let's not act like there's not. You had 92 players drafted in the past 10 years. Don't fumble the snap. Be able to turn around and hand the ball off and be able to throw it in a community swimming pool deep because you have the best receivers pretty much in the game. And you know you're going to get protection. So at the end of the day, that pick for it makes no sense. Jalen Hurts is not an NFL quarterback. He won't start as an NFL quarterback. You have Carson Wentz. I don't understand that one. And I've seen people try to explain it. And listen, I'm all about feel-good stories. That's great. But you're paid to win. You're paid to win. And I just don't think that pick makes no sense to me. The next one that made no sense to me. I think he's a really good player, but Henry Ruggs going 12th overall and going in front of CeeDee Lamb and Jerry Jeudy and Justin Jefferson blows my mind. I get it. He's fast. Everybody is fast in the NFL. Jerry Jeudy gets in and out of breaks as good as any receiver I've ever seen. I'm telling you, people, I know there's a lot of guys that run 4.3. There's a lot of guys that run 4.4 that can't play a lick in the NFL. And I know what people see with Ruggs, lightning speed. I remember from Montgomery, he's got lightning speed. But I think Jerry Jeudy's a better receiver. I think CeeDee Lamb's a better receiver. I thought CeeDee Lamb and Jerry Jeudy were the two best receivers in the draft. And I don't think Henry Ruggs is going to be Deshaun Jackson. Because really, when you take a guy like that, that's really kind of what you're hoping. Shoot, and I thought Waddell impressed me a lot more than Henry Ruggs did. I'll tell you that. Devin Waddell. And I think he's young, but I can't believe Ruggs was taken in front of Lamb and Jerry Jeudy. And again, other than that, the draft is the draft. And again, I grew up, obviously, in a household, it was college football. I mean, I grew up in Auburn, Alabama, didn't really have an NFL team, watched the NFL just for fun. Just for fun. So I really don't have a dog in the race. I really don't have a team. If I had to pick one, my dad played for the Packers, so I would say them. I like Aaron. But I'm not I don't have a bunch of 49er posters in my room. I didn't grow up. Saturday was way more important than Sunday in my household. Saturday was the day. Sunday was dessert. Saturday was the full meal. And speaking of Saturday, I do want to transition into our position preview. We did quarterback last episode, not the Greg Brown intel, but the last full episode. And if you look at Auburn's offensive line situation right now, like I told you guys, I'm never going to sugarcoat anything. I look at it, and it's not a feel-good story right now up front. You lose Prince Tega. You lose Harrell. You lose Caleb Kim, even though he split with Nick Brahms. I thought Caleb Kim was an okay player. You lose Mike Horton. You lose Jack Driscoll. So you really have one part-time starter returning in Nick Brahms. And the jury's still out on him. But looking behind them, the guy that you keep hearing is going to be a stud is Brodarius Ham. And if you don't remember Brodarius, he was the one who was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma, beat it, and it's just got rave reviews. I think he's going to be an all-SEC offensive lineman. If you kind of look at the way he plays, it's a little Ben Grubbs-ish. And I love that. Ben Grubbs is a hell of a player. Hell of a player. I think Brodarius is going to crack that starting lineup. You look behind Mike Horton. You had Jaleel Irvin. Again, another unproven guy. You don't know. Now, he has had time, which that's great. And that's the natural transition. You try to get him ready, and then hopefully by the time they got to get in there, they're ready. Learn behind a guy. There's been a lot of good, a lot of good stuff said about Brodarius and Jaleel. Tayshawn Manning, another guy that the jury's still out on. You've heard some good things. They say you ask the right questions, and that's great, but can you play? Can you consistently be a starter? And I know he's gotten some playing time, but again, we just don't know. It's kind of the same thing with Turbo on the basketball front. You don't know. And then you have Bailey Sharp. Okay, you have, there's a few guys, the Troxel kid, we all know that story. But you look at some of the red shirts, Keandre Jones, Cameron Stutz, Alec Jackson, again, they're redshirted guys. You don't know. You really don't know. And here's the thing, guys. I know we get practice reports, and that's great. That's great. But they're not going to come out and say this kid sucks and will never help us in a practice report. They may hint at it a little bit, but they're only going to give you general information about what's going on. And that's how it should be. Because if they told you everything, that'd be like us telling Iran everything. Hey, we're going to do some security stuff. We're going to do some intelligence stuff. We have a spy here. Just want to give you guys a heads up. You don't do that. So really from the outside looking in and not having a spring, that is where it just really hurts Auburn. That's where the advantage goes to teams heavily with returning offensive linemen. It's a huge advantage. Then you add your junior college signees for Auburn. Brendan Coffey, a guy that's got to come in and play. He's got to come in and play. You don't sign JUCO kids to sit the bench. Now, in that same token, Auburn signed Killian Zerere. I believe I'm saying that right. And he's got I believe it's a knee injury. He wasn't going to be able to go through spring. They hope he's going to be ready by the fall. But God, that's a big risk. He better work out. Because like I said, you don't sign junior college players to sit the bench. And then Auburn has their two high school Georgia signees that I think are going to redshirt. Avery Jernigan. There's one more kid off the top of my head. I can't remember, but I think they're going to redshirt. I don't think they'll be ready. They'll be good guys down the road. I think they're both tough asses if you watch their film. I like that. The Jernigan kid really likes to finish. That's really some of the things for you guys that want to know what it's kind of like inside the war room watching film, and especially offensive linemen. The first thing you look for, obviously, is their ability to bend. Are they a waist bender? Which means they're not flexible enough in their hips or in their knees or in their ankles that when they bend, they only bend from the top down, and you have no strength doing that. You can't stay on blocks doing that. Like a lot of times you'll see in the combine, they give those offensive linemen that stick they hold over their head, and they make them basically squat down because they want to see how their ankle strength is. They want to see their flexibility. And when you're watching it, that's the first thing. The second thing is, and you probably wouldn't think this, a lot of coaches, especially offensive line coaches, look to see how fast offensive linemen can get off the ground. It's kind of an unconscious, subconscious tell of athleticism. Some guys, when they, especially big guys, when they get down on the ground, they have to like use their hands to get them back up or whatever. Oh, but sometimes these guys are so athletic they can just pop right back up. And typically when you see that and you match that, the kid's tenacious, the kid has the size, quality, and he has that athleticism, that typically blends to an offer. And then obviously you can't forget the Council kid, the transfer from Akron. He, like I said, it's exactly similar to a junior college prospect. You don't sign them to sit the bench. So what you're saying right now, if I'm looking at this correctly, and again, it's a long time out, guys that you feel like can help you: Brodarius Ham, Jaleel Irvin, Nick Brahms, Tayshawn Manning. You could say Bailey Sharp. I don't know enough about the kid. Brendan Coffey, hopefully Killen Zarer, and Brandon Council. The red shirts, Keandre Jones, Cameron Stutz, those guys, you hope maybe one's a surprise, because there's always a few surprises. But there's always a few guys that don't perform how you thought they were going to. So it almost evens itself out. It's just so unproven up front. And these guys haven't had a spring to gel together. Now, a lot of times they've been working in that second group together because coaches mix and match it to build depth. And that's good. But again, that spring where you're the guy, there's something just about being the guy, a seat at the table, a starter. That there's something inherently different about that in the way you go about things. And you build that in the spring and in the summer, and your team's already built by the time the fall's here. See, everybody thinks fall camp, okay, here we go, football start. No, it's not even close. Fall camp. If you're having to install day one stuff on fall camp to anybody except the new signees, you are so far behind the 8 ball, you have no chance. So these guys are far along. It's just, are they going to be ready when the lights come on? And you just don't know until they actually come on. So what this position preview is really telling me is that it's unknown. It's unknown, and that's scary because Auburn has not had good offensive line play consistently. They have not had it. And you would think with all these guys leaving last year, that last year's offensive line would have been pretty damn good. But you'd be wrong. Because like I've said in earlier podcasts, it does not matter how good Bo Nix is. It does not matter how good the running back or receivers are if the offensive line cannot get the job done. I don't care who the coach is. Players win games. Nick Saban, when he didn't have the players, lost to Louisiana Monroe. Now they play La Monroe. They could beat them by 300. Players win the games. That's why recruiting is so important. It is the lifeblood of everything. It is the lifeblood of the whole program. And Auburn's been lacking on it. I'll give you the number again. Bama's had 92 players drafted since 2010. Auburn's had 39. 39. Right next to Arkansas. Right next to Mississippi State. And that's no disrespect to Arkansas or Mississippi State. But those guys have not been perennial dominant forces in the SEC West. And that's something that, like I said, Coach Bignell has to come in and be able to recruit with the likes of Sam Pittman, with the likes of Matt Luke. Because there's some damn good O-line coaches in this league. And that's the transition Auburn's going to have to make, or you're going to continue to see the same thing over and over again. You'll continue to lose to Georgia. You'll continue to lose to LSU. You'll continue to lose to Florida. And the Bama game, you'll have to hope to hang on long enough for something crazy to happen. If I'm an Auburn fan, it would be nice to just be able to line up and kick somebody's ass for once. That what was an elite opponent. And at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. And Auburn has to fix it, or you'll continue to see the same thing over and over again. And we'll move on. We'll actually look at the running backs in the next episode. But, as I wrap this episode up, just to kind of recap everything, if you're an Auburn basketball fan, you've got to take a step back and look at the big picture. And there are so many big fish out there. Let the process work. And I know a lot of you guys, this is going to go in one ear and out the other. Because, heck, every Auburn fan wanted Greg Brown. Every Auburn fan wanted Jalen Green. This is uncharted waters, really, in basketball. So it's exciting. It's exciting. So, of course, there's going to be a huge letdown. But understand, this is part of a bigger process. And in that same vein, why doesn't Bruce Pearl have a lifetime contract at Auburn? Why? You could build a statue right now of Bruce Pearl. And it's going to continue to get better. Now, I'm not an intermediary between Bruce Pearl and Auburn. But if I'm Auburn, that lifetime contract, it's been offered. It's been in hand. You had a barbecue, man. You snitched on somebody a while ago. Okay, that's fine. Auburn went to the Final Four. Let me say that again. And you older Auburn fans are this lands. It just hits different. Auburn went to the Final Four in basketball and really got screwed out of going to the national championship game. Oh boy, double dribbled. There's a lot of calls that in a game, and that's few and far between, but it's just, it blows my mind. Like, if it was me, if I'm Alan Green, Bruce, you got a lifetime contract. Not only do you have a lifetime contract, we want to make Stephen Pearl the head coach in waiting. Why not? Somebody tell me I'm wrong. You literally went to the Final Four. Okay. I remember when Auburn couldn't make the NCAA tournament. It was amazing, Auburn making the NCAA tournament. That was a pipe dream a while ago. Now it's expected. Not only is it expected, you're expected to make a run. Now you're expected to sign 5 stars. Let's give the guy the piece of paper, man. Stop playing games. I love Sonny Smith. I love Cliff Ellis. Them guys ain't done what Bruce has done. And the climb to the mountain is still going. So that's kind of, I don't understand why that hasn't been offered. I'm sure there's other things or whatever, but Auburn has to do whatever they have to do to hang on to this man. Give him Gus's buyout. I guarantee you, I'd be willing to bet if you polled the Auburn fan base, there would be overwhelming support to take Gus Malzahn's buyout and give it to Bruce Pearl. Now, I know you can't do that, obviously, but you know it would be supported. Who's the most popular coach in Auburn right now? I'll do you one better. When you think of Auburn head coaches, who's the first guy you think about? Did you say Bruce? I think a lot of you did. And a lot of times when you say Malzahn, it's in a negative context. And again, I think Coach Malzahn has had an amazing career. And I've said the dude is the head coach at Auburn. He's accomplished a lot of things. But this marriage to me just seems to have run its course. Or this relationship just seems to have run its course. It's like Gus Malzahn to Auburn is like the first serious relationship you're in before you're in the serious relationship to the girl you married. You know what I'm saying? Like the first girl you dated for 2 or 3 years. Like it was a ton of fun at first. Yeah, I mean, it was, it was great, spontaneous. You never knew what was coming next. Most of the time it was good. And then the fire got doused. And now you guys are just kind of living in the same house, hooking up once a month, one Saturday a month, getting together and trying to rekindle the flame. And you get it for a second. But then you lose to Minnesota. And it's back to just can't stand being around each other. That's what it seems like to me. and you're kind of finding out that the girl you're with is kind of a lot weirder than you thought. Or it's different. I think that analogy works. And I don't know how much longer is on the clock for Auburn and Gus Malzahn. And, again, you never want to, I'll never, sit here and be like, they need to fire this guy right now, all this stuff. Because, again, these guys have families, and there's a lot more that goes into it. But let's not act like Gus Malzahn doesn't have a lot of money and is not getting paid a ton of money to win, to go to the playoff, to consistently beat Georgia, consistently beat Alabama. You're not going to beat them all every year. You're not. But the problem is when you have somebody that's my age that remembers growing up and beating Alabama every year. I was on the sideline when Brody Croy got sacked 12 times. I had a sack and a half. And you remember those days, and a lot of people are stuck in those days still as Auburn football fans. And you've got to get out of it because it's changed. Because the guy across the other sideline, it ain't Mike Shula. And this may be an unpopular opinion, I think if Nick Saban was Alabama when Tommy Tuberville was at Auburn, it'd have been a totally different story. Totally different story. And if you're not signing elite offensive linemen consistently, you're not going to win against elite opponents consistently. And that's it. That is, to me, the story of Auburn football lately. And it needs to change. But again, I do want to throw this in here before I leave. We're looking. If anybody wants to do any advertising, just shoot me a DM on Twitter at the J-Boy Show. We'd love to do it. We're getting bigger. Like I said, our response last time, I've actually gotten a few people asking me about doing some advertising on here. So if you are interested in that, just send me a DM. It's cheap, obviously. And my thing is, I'm not sitting here trying to make a ton of money off this. I actually just want to give a venue, and it's nice to make money, obviously, but I want to give a venue for Auburn fans to be able to tune into a podcast and get really straight talk and the truth and not fluff pieces. That's why do you think auburnsports.com, the rival site, does so well? Because other pieces, they're not fluff pieces. Jay Tate, Jeff Lee, Brian, Nate King, those guys, they're going to tell it to you how it really is. And as a fan, or as somebody who's trying to get information, or somebody who's trying to be well informed, that's all you can ask for. And there's other sites, which I won't mention, that do a lot of fluff pieces. They do fluff pieces 24/7. But I'm not going to name anybody that does fluff pieces. So again, I want to thank you guys so much for tuning in. I really enjoy doing this. We'll have an intel segment actually coming up later this week on Lee Hunter, the Auburn defensive line commit that actually a story was wrote on, and his recruitment. It's going to be down to the wire. But I do actually have some intel on that, have an inside source on that I do feel really good about. So continue to listen, guys. Please go to YouTube, type in the J-Boy Show, and subscribe there for me. And again, you guys make this happen. And any questions you have, I really haven't gotten a ton of questions on Twitter. So if you guys want to hit me with them, I'll answer them in the next one. If not, we'll just keep doing it this way. I am going to have guests. Like I said, I'm always going to be honest with you. I actually ordered some pretty top high level equipment as far as my knowledge goes that I'm going to be setting up. So the audio should be a lot clearer. We're going to be on a lot more platforms, and we're going to keep growing this thing. You'll also see me. I'm going to be making some guest appearances on some other podcasts as well. And again, like I said, I really appreciate you guys listening. And this is the J-Boy Show, a new episode, and J-Boy is out.